Well, the good news is that Bill and Dawn get a vacation, and the bad news for y'all is that I'm up here. So it's like Rusty said, it's an honor, and you don't want to say it's a burden, but it's a responsibility. It's different when you come stand up here. You think, yeah, you need to be smart and wise and careful, mostly with my mouth is what comes to my mind most of the time. So I'm trying to, I'm certainly not Bill and I can't be Bill, but I try to think of what I deal with and something that lays on me a lot and often, and that is trying to stay on God's truth in all situations on my life. I am so easily led astray by what's in here. God is truth, and He will not lie nor lead us astray. But our fears and our doubts, they will take us away and take me away so quickly that I don't even realize it. In Deuteronomy 32:4, it says, "He is the rock, His work is perfect, for all His ways are judgment, a God of truth and without iniquity, just and right is He." And we can count on that. That's God's word. These things are come upon thee, even in the latter days, if thou turn to the Lord thy God, and shalt be obedient unto His voice. For the Lord thy God is a merciful God. He will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers. We got to turn to Him and not to ourselves. My flesh tells me I got to handle this. I got to figure it out. I have to have an answer. And as soon as I start doing that, then my brain says, you can't do that, or that's a bad idea, or what if this happens if you make that decision? And just like it tells us to be obedient unto His voice, to be obedient to God is to call upon Him and to show Him, the honor and the glory and the gratefulness that we have for Him is to be obedient to Him, is to ask Him, to invite Him into our world and into our life and our family in all situations and at all times. As quickly as the trouble or the fear or the situation comes on you, and it does, it can come minute by minute, by second, and then you can go days and nothing happened. But no matter how quickly it gets there, God is already there. He is already in that moment. He's ahead of us. He's behind us. He is everywhere. Everywhere is now to Him. The future, the past. He knew it was coming. He knew we would get there. He knew we would have that fair. He's waiting for us. He's waiting for us to call on Him, and He's waiting to help us. In Psalms 46, it says, "God is our refuge and strength, a present help in time of trouble." And we don't just have to endure. A lot of times for most of my life and continue today, I just, as a man, you just think, well, I just got to just toughen up and just get through it and handle this and fix it the best I can. And if I can't fix it, I just have to be here when it's over, if you will, and handle it. We don't have to do that. We can call on God and say, God, take this from me. Show me the way. Give me the strength. In Ephesians 6, verse 10, he says, "Be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might," not mine, not my might, His might and His power. And we should have confidence in that and take confidence from that. I was talking to a guy today, and he said, he works in our office. He does a lot of the inside selling and stuff, and he's really good at what he does. He's a good Christian guy. He's really great. But a comment he made, he said, I have a lot of confidence and I like to win, which is not a bad thing. As men, we like to win. But I had written this up last night, and I thought about that later. And, if our confidence is coming from the right source, then it can be a good thing for us. But if we're placing all that confidence in our own abilities and don't recognize that everything that we are is what God has made us and what He will make us, then we're relying on ourselves, and we're flawed. God will put us and the people we care about in stressful situations. He'll put us in trials that will test and mold us into the people he wants us to be, people that are useful to him and to the rest of his children on earth, so we can, so we can be some good to somebody. Instead of just walking around saying, I got to take care of me, or I got to take care of me and my kids in my house, and the rest of y'all, just stay away. I got a fence for you. That's not God's plan for us. When we accept Christ, it's free, and our salvation is free. And yet God, he wants us to be his people here on this fallen earth, and he gives us the tools to do that if we ask him. He reaches out to us. But if we don't do that, our flesh, it so often intercepts and it intercedes with the doubts and the fears that can come down on us like a cloud or a fog that blocks out our sight and leaves us with this limited perspective from our little human weakness. It fuels my self-doubt. It fuels my fears into something or someone I don't like, but I can't seem to regain my freedom from it. I get stuck there. Sometimes, you don't seem to know who or what we were, but knowing who or what we have become is not good. And you're just locked down in that mess. And, you continually, you're turning inward and inward and inward. And you start down that spiral like in a funnel, as you see the liquid go down it. He speaks to that too, of course, in Psalms 143, verses 3 and 4. He says, the psalmist writes, "For the enemy hath persecuted my soul. He hath smitten my life down to the ground. He hath made me to dwell in darkness, as those that have long been dead." And you can get to that point, and you're just there, in a place that seems like you can't get out of. And, the fault is your own. You don't reach out. You don't ask for help. You don't say, "God, help me." Or you don't tell someone, "I need help. I need your help from this. I have a burden I can't carry by myself." We all think we have to handle it. We have to handle as parents, we have to handle our children's problems. As husbands, we want to take care of our wives. As wives, we want to take care of our husbands. And, all that is normal and natural. But inside, we have to have someone that we can turn to do those things and not rely on it in our own power, because our own power is corrupt. I try and do that on my own. I start getting angry. I start getting mad because, I give people advice. Actually, I tell them what to do. It's what it really ends up being, because I'll use my loud voice, and all of a sudden people are going, "You're screaming at me." And I'm going, "I'm just talking emphatically. That's different." You'll know the difference when I'm screaming. But although our emotions can be our enemy, they were given to us by God for our benefit, just like everything else. He gave them to us to love, to laugh, to cry, to be joyful, to have sorrow, to know the loss, to know strife, to experience suffering, to experience the success of winning, of doing well. All tools for God to use us, to teach us, and guide us back to him for our own sakes. So if we take those things and those emotions and realize that this is occurring to me, but there's a reason bigger than me. There's something outside of me that's going on here for me. Our sin, our flesh corrupt God's purposes for us, and can lead us to stay in that negative emotion or that negative state, telling ourselves mental lies, allowing the darkness to grow and the fog to deepen. The mental lies, I tell them to myself all the time, and then I get frustrated and say, you look in the rearview mirror. I drive a lot for her. I look in the rearview mirror. It's like, "What, are you, an idiot? How many times have you done that?" And I go right back to it. I'm trying to be better at it, and it seems as though sometimes, it does get better. And you go, don't listen to that. Don't listen to the junk that your brain throws up there. We become a mess of insecurity, of anger and jealousy, and on, to simmer and develop, ready to be manipulated by the lies and the temptations of the world. Because you go down that road, and then you look for something around here to make something's going to make me happy. I'm going to go buy something. I'm going to go do something. I'm going to go drink. I'm going to go hide or whatever it is. And it can happen in that quick, in a few seconds or in a few minutes. And that can lead into weeks and years, that you can get into that ditch and you can't get out of it. And, there was a time in our early marriage, there was a joke about the black leather jacket in my family, where I had an office with a big window at our house, and, Tammy would come home from school, I'd already be home from making sales calls, sitting there in my jacket, looking out the window. It was good. There was no heat out there. There was steam heat in our house. There was no heat much anywhere in that house, but anyway, it was not, it was not the best. I wasn't doing very well, and I was not admitting it, and, thankfully I'm not the man I was then. Now, I've learned more. What you think about, like, just the last few days, all the people, the shooters in El Paso and Ohio over the weekend, and all the political junk aside, I have to think that those people went down these paths and they had the opportunities to not buy into those lies and the stuff they're telling themselves and their anger and all that emotion that's so negative and fuels them and leads them down into that darkness. They had those opportunities up to the last, but they had succumbed to it. And the God of this world, the evil one, he is standing alongside, applauding it and pushing and saying, yes, that's right. You everything you're feeding yourself is correct, and yet we know it's wrong. Jesus warned the disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane. And in Mark 14, verse 38, Jesus said, "Watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. The spirit truly is ready, but the flesh is weak." And, it is. It is weak. Christ was here as a man. His flesh became weak. He asked about taking the cup away. He experienced all that. He felt all of these things. There's you can only imagine all the things that he experienced in his life that aren't in the Scripture, just the day in and the day out, and all these little pits and valleys and things that we all go through. And he came and he had every one of those. It can be like a sort of the drawing, you're supposed to be a tornado. It can be like a tornado sucking in everything and leaving just desolation in its path. And those negative emotions and the lies and the fears and all that stuff, it keeps going inward and inward and inward. And, it can seem like you can't get free of it. And they talk about a tornado coming across and pulling up the asphalt, off the ground and just taking everything away and stripping it clean. And the power that's there, and the power that's in our mind. Our mind is so strong and can hold such sway over us. And it can truly seem hopeless. I mean, there's a crisis of hopelessness in our country. And, the answer is God. I truly believe that. So how do you avoid the storm, that tornado of life that comes to us? What do you do? Well, we know there's a tornado warning. What do you do? Now your phone, it used to be the sirens. Now it's your phone beeps at you. You look on the weather app, say, oh, it's not coming here. It's, it's down in Loxley. I'm good. You think, oh, well, how about that? It's coming my way. Okay, maybe I need to go to a safe place. And so we gather up the people that are around us and let everybody know. Or you call you're off somewhere else and you get the warning for home. You're going to call the folks that are there and say, hey, did y'all get the warning? There's something bad coming. Take shelter. We can do that same thing. We know where the shelter is. God gives us shelter in these situations. When the tornado comes, when that swirl starts in my head that's sucking me down in the hole, telling me, you can't do this, you're not good enough, I know how to get away from it. I know where to go. We have to cast out the lies from our thoughts and stay on what is the truth and the reality of each situation. How many times in our lives, in my life, have you been involved in a situation and something, and there's a certain amount of the situation, it's a stressful, it's a problem, and there's truth to that. There's a reality there. There's things you have to deal with. But you can take and add to that in your brain. And you can add, well, what's the really motive behind that person doing this? Maybe there's this, that, and the other thing is also going on with them, and they're trying to do this other stuff. And, that may or may not be true. But the fact is, all you can deal with is what you know. And that's the truth. And the God lets us see the truth of the matter for us to deal with. If he wanted us to know all that other stuff, he'd make us know it. And he may make us know it later on in that situation. But we have to stop. Part of the negative thoughts is to realize that I can't deal with all the what ifs and the maybes of everything in my life, because it just leads you down the hole. I can deal with right now. And God says, I give you enough light for a day, a step. Leave tomorrow to itself. And man, take him at his word. He's not lying. He says tomorrow's got enough trouble for itself. Get through today. And I say, yeah, but what about tomorrow? Yeah, but what about tomorrow? He's already there tomorrow. He's not worried about it. I've got you there too. When you get there, I'll be there. When we stay on that truth and the reality, we can't, not focus on, we have to not focus on the truth that's amplified by our fears and emotions. And, not locked up with, if you're angry with somebody and just stay on that and let it chew at you. And, it's a phrase I've heard you tell a couple times, Jimmy. It's like taking poison and expecting your enemy to die. You get angry at them or angry at somebody and they're not doing what you want to do, and you just walk around just furious and chewed up, and hey man, they're going for ice cream. They don't care. See ya. And then, then that makes me mad. Like, how can you possibly be okay when I'm so mad at you? And we can't be paralyzed with the fears and the lies we tell ourselves about ourselves. And I do that, and I'm, this is strictly written to me, and y'all just get to sit in for the sermon. We have to stay on what's the truth of our lives together, our life under God, brothers and sisters, sinners together, lost together, knowing that the other sins or failings are no different or no worse than mine. They're all equal in God's eyes. We're all in the boat, y'all. We're all in the boat. And, thankfully, we have folks here in our church and our brothers and sisters and people we know that are Christians that are in the boat with us. That not just here on Wednesday night or Sunday, but out in the world Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, wherever you are, wherever you go, there's a person there that's in the boat with you that understands these things. And, to seek them out, it's always I go in a lot of these plants and stuff, see a lot of people, and it's always a pleasure when I make the connection, with another Christian. I mean, it's encouraging. And, I always make it a point to say, hey man, it's really good to, see you out here and have somebody else to lean on when we're out here dealing with all this stuff. And, and he calls us to do that, to support one another, to give each other strength. We have to remember that the trials are from God. He gives those trials. He puts us in those situations. He makes that person push my button, And why's that for, God? Why me? And he says, that's not for you to know right now. I'll let you know later. Or maybe later you won't act this way, in a different situation where it's critical that you don't, or you can be the example for someone else. The trials come from him for us and for others, and all of it's to make us into the people that he wants us to be. Not the person I want to be. Not the person that I want to be driving down the road off in my fantasy land when everything works out just right and I sell gazillions of things, I got tons of money and no problems, no worries and all that stuff, Because, I don't think I'd be very happy. I think I'd be a miserable rich person, And that'd be something that make me really mad. Then I'll be right back in that circle, all about me. To be the people he wants us to be, the people he sent his son to die for. That's what he wants. That's what he's doing these things for. So we can be examples and help for those who are lost, So we can be his instruments here on earth for the folks that are lost. These two guys that did the horrific things and took all those innocent lives, What if somebody had spoken to them and had pulled them aside 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 days ago? Who knows? Who knows? Somebody had spoken up and said, to them, not to go tattle on them, but to say, hey man, I see you're struggling. What's going on? Yeah, maybe it would have helped. I don't know. Who knows? Yeah, God knows. That's who. In Psalm 61, verses 1 to 4, he says, "Hear my cry, O God. Attend unto my prayer. From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. For thou hast been a shelter for me, and a strong tower from the enemy. I will abide in the tabernacle forever. I will trust in the cover of thy wings. Selah." Our safe place is God and his word. That's our safe place. That's our shelter. That's our tornado shelter. You know, if we had those little placards they make you put in public buildings, tornado shelter here. If they put, one of those, shelter from the world here, and a cross underneath it. Sprinkle those about in town. And maybe a little stack of the Gideon Bibles that Ron's always got. Our safe place is God, and having that confidence in Him. And just like bringing someone into the safety of the tornado shelter can save their life, we can use our knowledge of that safety of God's truth to help others through the tornadoes in their lives as we help ourselves. But you got to shelter yourself first. You got to be in the shelter before you can get somebody else and run out and grab them and bring them back. You got to be there to do it, and you got to be sound-minded enough to do it. Even though you might be hurt, you can still help others. But knowing that you're on the right path, that you have a path to that shelter to where you're safe. Facing the lies I tell myself is the hardest thing for me to do. It's the hardest thing for me to do in my life. I've struggled with it as far as I can remember. I spent my life thinking I'm not good enough or not smart enough or whatever not statement you want to put there. I mean, insert your own not statement there. I run around that tree over and over and over again, and frankly, I'm sick of it, really. And so I think that's really what it takes to finally, try to break that cycle. You just get sick of it. I think, what am I doing? Why? What? And not only am I not smart enough, I'm an idiot for believing those lies of myself. Look at this. And with that one, God's probably going, now you're getting onto something, Matt. Okay? Believe that. The lies lead to doubts, fears, and insecurity, just feeding on each other. And it just builds and builds and builds and builds. Just like the storm, it pulls everything in. The tornado starts with these rolling winds that are horizontal, and then slowly they start to turn, and then it builds the power up into the upper clouds, and as it does, it feeds everything from the bottom. And it just continues to grow, and the more it feeds in, the stronger it gets, the bigger and more destructive and the worse path it leaves. And my brain operates that way. And I suspect it's that way for many folks. Stepping back from the situation, my own or someone else's or your own, can give you the perspective to see the truth of it. And it will help to identify the lies and the emotional junk and the debris that's, flying around in the tornado, the cow that flies by. You're going, that's not normal. That's probably not a good thing. And same thing with the thoughts in my head. It's an idea or stupid thought comes by. It's like, that's crazy, Matt. Don't buy into that. That's not going to happen. And if it does, that's when you'll deal with it. Not now. You get rid of that stuff. If we can only just, Caleb drove us to church tonight, and we're coming down the hill by Lankford over here, and I'm trying not to be overly protective dad and just coach him all the way because he's been driving a while now, and he's doing real good. And so we're coming down the road, and you get over the hill a little bit, and you kind of ease off the gas a little bit, and kind of let it coast some, and wait until you start to touch the brakes a little bit, and kind of coast it down to the stop. And so I'm waiting for him to do that, and he did. I didn't say anything, so that was good. But if we could just only touch, our mental brakes enough to just slow that momentum, long enough to allow God to come in, let Him merge in and lead us. If I could just ease up and say, hold up, Matt, God, show me the way. What's the song? God, take the wheel. What was that? Jesus, take the wheel. Yeah. And, and not just here in this building. Here in this building, it's not always easy. Your brain wanders when you're sitting there and I'm wondering about my to-do list or, who knows what. And, but it's much easier here, and it's so hard when you go out those doors. And when your wheels roll off that limestone out there and onto that asphalt, man, it starts coming in. It's like wading out into the Gulf out here. The waves just start getting higher and higher until I've gone far enough. But you got to go out there where the attacks are strongest. That's where we live. And that's where God wants us. God doesn't tell us to go in the shelter and stay there. He says, come in the shelter and get strong and go back out in the storm and bring others into the shelter. That's what he tells us. And that's what our hearts want to do. Once you get that shelter and that love of God in you, you want everybody to be safe. You want them to. It's a wonderful feeling. But we got to, out there where they're strongest, when we're alone, when we're with others and still alone, still afraid, still lying to ourselves, we have to know that God was at that spot at that time before I was born. He knew that time and that moment, and all those emotions were all going to be there. And he was waiting patiently for me to get there so I could turn to him and ask for his help. And he could reach down, tap my brakes, and take the wheel and let me, just ride and trust and have faith. And so, for closing prayer, I'm going to read from Psalm 63. It's titled Thirsting for God, the Psalm of David. O God, thou art my God. Early will I seek thee. My soul thirsteth for thee. My flesh longeth for thee in a dry and thirsty land where no water is. I see thy power and thy glory, so as I have seen thee in the sanctuary. Because thy loving kindness is better than life, my lips shall praise thee. Thus will I bless thee while I live. I will lift up my hands in thy name. My soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness, and my mouth shall praise thee with joyful lips. When I remember thee upon my bed and meditate on thee in the night watches, because thou hast been my help, therefore in the shadow of thy wings will I rejoice. My soul followeth hard after thee. Thy right hand upholdeth me. But those that seek my soul to destroy it shall go into the lower parts of the earth. They shall fall by the sword. They shall be a portion for the foxes. But the king shall rejoice in God. Every one that sweareth by him shall glory. But the mouth of them that speak lies shall be stopped. Amen.